Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Bhagavad Gita is an amazing book because it's evergreen and it always applies to everyone. It's really nice to realize this. For instance, Arjuna's issue in chapter 1 was he had a grief moment. Now, this moment of grief is really where you can look at this in different ways, but one of them is he tried to do things perfectly, and he realized that no matter how he does it, it's imperfect. However, he has this idea that I have to, have the right outcomes and the right people, and the family should not be on the side of adharma. So he had this whole vision of how life should be, and this caused him to doubt himself and to doubt what he, should do and should not do. Now, have you ever, by the way, had a moment where when you do something for other people, you have no issue doing it? You just go ahead and it's relatively easy and you're almost very, relatively clear what needs to be done. But when you do a project for yourself, you kind of get stuck a little bit. Does anyone have this? Can you relate to this? Yeah, interesting. Same, right? And you sometimes just wish that, I wish I could be that other person. I could just do things for that other person and just flow with the whole process. So this is because we have these certain rules that we impose upon ourselves, and we stop ourselves and we say, I'm not good enough and I should be doing this better. So Arjuna was going through the same issue. He had to do something for, according to his, his duty, according to his place in this world. But he couldn't quite get himself to do so. That is because he doesn't understand, and that's why we're here, that the laws, see, they may put you into a different position in life, and everyone is in a certain position. So there's not one person that is not, a contributor in this world. However, in some cases, what happens is you find yourself doing your duty, but your duty requires a great deal of exertion out of you. And this becomes sometimes hard to cope with, right? Because you say, why is my duty so hard and everyone else is so easy? So you have this like comparison thing. And what Krishna says is that if you look at your life, then it's really governed by a certain set of laws that do not waver. The gravity, for instance, suppose an Indian drops a cup and the European drops a cup. Is the gravity going to now discriminate, the Indian from the European and say, okay, Indian dropped it, therefore it's going to drop one way versus the European? See, so the laws do not waver who drops the cup or who applies this teaching onto themselves. We set up our own self-imposed limitations, and then we say, I come from this place, from this country, from this unit, from this time, and therefore, then we create these rules why I shouldn't therefore be successful. So these are all what's called self-imposed limitations. So what Krishna is wanting to do is get us out of our own idea, our own story that we've been telling ourselves for so long that despite given opportunities and time, 24 hours, we create these small narratives that occupy the person's mind, and they just really fill up and take your energy away. So, for instance, another example is if you take this force of destruction, which is the most important force in the universe, that force that removes that old moment, that removes your your relationship from one state and gives you a chance to go into a different state of a relationship with yourself or with other people. Often there's this fear or mishap or this apprehension to confront it. But once again, if you just look at that through some analysis, you will see that the most graceful force in your life that has blessed you on and on, without which you would have not been able to grow, it is the very force that everyone's afraid of, which is the force of destruction, the force of death, you could say. And instead of thereby fearing it and saying that I do not want things to leave me, instead, what Krishna is suggesting or helping us see is that the laws, as we said, are not going to stop for you. They're not going to stop removing people, removing time, removing making your body older. That just keeps going forward endlessly. Instead, what I have to do is I have to look at that and I say, knowing that I'm within these laws, governed by these laws 24/7, 365, and I cannot come out of them because I did not make them, I did not design them. I just found myself in this bag of meat, right? And then grew, took food, and governed by certain ideas how the what needs to be done in this world. And I eat food, and then there's a digestion that happens automatically. I don't control that. I don't control who is ultimately in your life, do you? I mean, you may say kind of, yeah, I've got control of who I choose, which people I hang out with. But did you really choose before you chose that? Did you really choose to choose? Right? You may say out verbally, say, I chose to be with these people and these teachers, but based on your tendencies, did you choose that? Based on the tendencies of who you're going to choose in the first place. So that was also given to you. Furthermore, you don't choose when, for how long you're going to live and when you're going to get born. And that too was chosen for you. So there are so many things in your life which are just simply chosen for you. And like Arjuna, his job wasn't easy. His job was to be a Kshatriya, a warrior, a protector, the one that looks at and upholds a value system in a society. And he wasn't really, very happy about that because it required a lot of exertion. So now, like this, what Krishna says is you have to look at your place within this grand scheme of things where you're born, and ask yourself the question, what are those tendencies which I came with, which are helping me live this life, and in what manner could I, have the best possible journey through what I'm given, rather than saying what I'm given is not good. I don't like this. There are better people with better tendencies, and therefore the whole person and the whole journey turns into a complaint mode, and it doesn't help. Therefore, the whole journey is about honoring what you came with, what you have, and saying, that is who I am. That is the unique individual that I am. And having been given these skills and talents, which are unique to me, now what? What's next? In what way do I want to build my life with what I'm given? The only other chance, of course, is to say, that's not good enough. I should have more. Why was I not given more? Why was I not given that? Why was I not given better parents, better community, better environment, better country, better teachers, better knowledge, better mind, better this? So there's just no use in speaking like this because the fact that you're born, that takes a massive amounts of punyam just to be born as a human being. Don't you think? According to the Vedas, you could have been born as somebody's cat or a lion or something like a porcupine, or a spider or a snake. And that would have been sort of what it is, but you're not. So just to be born in this human body, that alone is one of the greatest boons in the universe. They say there's three great boons. The first one is to be born a human being. So we all take that and we were like, all walk away patting ourselves on the back. But it says, no, 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 that's not good enough because most people are born human beings, but then they go, they regress. The second boon is to find a guru. Now, not any guru, because there are many people who do have gurus, but what kind of a guru are they? Can they take me to the final, or can they just kind of, help me to build my ego up or whatever it is? But the third boon is that guru, which you find has a pramana, and that pramana can show you the truth. And so when you find these three gurus, you're a human being, you have guru in your life, and the guru has a pramana, which cannot be contradicted, then you have gained the three highest boons in the universe. And now, even then, if one has those three boons, that still is not the end of the journey, because sometimes people get too comfortable and they say, oh, now I have, very comfortable. And so the whole, they start to take things for granted, start to take the knowledge for granted. You've been hearing it so many times. So now it becomes just a repetitive voice in your head. So even then, you have to, keep it fresh and keep this knowledge new. And that's really up to you. In what manner do you want to do that? How do you want to make this learning exciting for yourself? And there are many ways they can, you can use the help of books, the help of audios, the help of AI nowadays, which is even, more exciting than ever before. So there are many methods nowadays to keep this knowledge fresh for yourself. Now, in verse 31, Krishna will continue this narrative about duty, and he will show us why duty, having come in this world with qualities, is important to actually practice it. Verse 31, Swadharmam apicha vekshya na vaikam pitum arhasi dharmyadhi yuddhachreyonyate kshatriyasya na vidyate. And so he says, from the standpoint of your own duty, you cannot waver. Arjuna, there is nothing greater than a kshatriya, than the battle for the cause of Dharma. Okay, so there's nothing greater than being born with, and knowing that you're born with certain qualities. So the verse here is talking about what we call the Varna Ashrama. And Varna Ashrama is not an Indian concept, by the way. It's a universal concept. And I will show you how. So suppose that we ask, what are you here for? That's a valid question. What am I here for? What did I come here for? Did I just come here to eat, procreate? What do we say? Eat, marry, and what's the other one? Drink. Drink, marry, and eat, right? So that's the basic way to use your boon, but it's not very effective. So the Veda gives a framework, and it says, no, you're not here to marry, eat, and drink. You're here to do much more than that. In fact, marry, drink, and eat are just incidental based on what you're doing. Now, they say there are 4 types of people that every single civilization carries, and they are the Brahmana. Brahmana is a thinker or a philosopher or teacher or someone that deals with knowledge or information, and they set up the laws for the constitution. They generally work with ways to help people come out of darkness and so on. So they deal with a lot of that. You could say scientists also who are in their lab, studying the microbes under the microscope, and then they have to create anti-cancerous medicine. All of this requires thinking. Now imagine a world without thinkers. Then who would set up and who would show us what's the right way? So the world would in a way fall apart. Then the second is a kshatriya. Kshatriya are a ruler or the navy or anyone that has an occupation of upholding the laws. There's a show, by the way, that I like to watch. It's called Border Patrol on YouTube, where people will land on airports and they will, get. One of them is called Border Patrol. The other is called To Catch a Smuggler. And I like this because it shows you how far these smugglers will go. Ordinary people, by the way. So I don't think smuggler is an appropriate word, but how far they will go to deny it. And the first thing I notice is the first thing that when you've done something wrong is denial, which is really interesting. So, they will have sniffer dogs and they're very adamant and very persistent. And there was this one lady from arriving into Rome, and the report was that she is visiting and possibly associated to a criminal organization. So these kshatriyas, the guards, they stood by and watched the face. And so they took her on the side and they said, passport, please. And she gave them the passport. But then later on, they do a little interview. How was she? And they said, she was very sure of herself, very confident, almost a little bit arrogant. And I watched this, so you could say that a little bit. But then she goes inside the checker room, and so they open up her bag and they start to search. And they say, do you have any illegal substances? No. Do you have any things that you shouldn't be carrying? No, no, no. It's like, if I did that, right, she would have fooled me. She probably would have fooled you too. I mean, the composure is so good, so normal that I would have never suspected that she is carrying 430 grams of cocaine. But this fella who is a Kshatriya, has an ability to read people beyond their, appearances. And so he says, no, she was totally persistent with her story, but I knew that there was something more. And he gets this right almost every single time. Now, if you look at these people, they are, they're these, strong, characters. Usually they're authoritative, and, they're very attractive in some ways. They're called Kshatriya. And without them, we would have, we would be afraid to move out or to go out because the streets would be unsafe. And then you have a Vaishya. Vaishyas are the Silicon Valley types, such as those who are movers and shakers, the stock market, the entrepreneurs, the business owners, and the ones who exchange value, the ones who move and create wealth in this world. Imagine you take that out of this world or any society, what would happen then? Right? It will all just fall apart. And then you have the Shudras. Shudras are the supporters. So any company you go to, you will find people who are basically, most of them, who are supporting different roles that they're assigned to. And these supporters are absolutely crucial for our infrastructure, for accounting, for data entry, or you could say programmers, or basically 99% of population are basically supporters. So you can see now, has any civilization or is there without these four? Can you say this is only valid to the Vedas in India? Absolutely not. This is international in the past, present, and future. So now there's another kind of analogy of this, and it says, just like these four are crucial to our infrastructure, in the same way, like you take your head, your head you might consider the most important, your brain, but actually your brain needs what we say the other end of the body, the feet. The feet carry it, they're the Shudras. And so the arms are the Kshatriyas, they're the ones who protect you. And so the whole body is equally important. As if you look at it as a whole, you cannot quite say that one part is more important than the other. The only reason why the brain is important is because the legs and the arms are protecting it. So in that same way, like here, Krishna says, you, Arjuna, are, in this case, a Kshatriya. Okay, that's what you may be a Brahmana, you may be a supporter, you may be a Vaishya. And by the way, there is no such thing as Shudra, because this is unfortunately, when you popularize anything, it takes on a negative connotation, which is Shudra is at the bottom and Brahmana is at the top, right? And you never marry if you're a Brahmana, you never marry a Shudra. If you're Shudra, you never marry a Vaishya. The whole thing is convoluted, which is what happens if you popularize any good teaching. However, what it's saying here is that in this case, you're a Kshatriya. And because you're challenged in a position, and you're in a position to challenge the king, Dhritarashtra, who by his non-ability to see what is right or wrong, you're in a position to straighten that out. Nobody else can do that. And if you do not choose to do that, then what happens is you're going against your innate nature because you're born and given this strength in you. That whole strength is that your Varna system. And going against that system just because it's inappropriate, or not inappropriate, but because it's inconvenient for you, that ironically, though it seems on the surface level easier, that's actually going to make your life harder. Because what you need is to evolve. And the only way that you can evolve is by taking what you've already been given, your Varna, your brilliance as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, take that and move your life in the light of what you're already given. And so Krishna says, if you do not, then once again, you will not feel good about yourself. You will compare yourself with others. You will find yourself that you're not shining, you're not brilliant. People won't be able to give you feedback because you're not really brilliant in anything. And second of all, the person will not ever come to a stage and say, I can. I've left a legacy in this world, or I'm living a legacy. And when you're not living your legacy, your calling, then what happens is your energy slumps. It's like, wake up and it's hard to stay awake. And, I just lost my drive, my enthusiasm to live. As kids, we were like so enthusiastic about waking up, and there was so much to live for. So as an adulthood, then we slowly lose that connection to our innate nature. And what happens if we get tired and we say, why am I tired? Well, there are many reasons, of course, but one of them is because I'm not living my purpose, what I'm being endowed with. And so now, this Varna system is not to be mistaken as something that you're born with. This is another era where you're born a Brahmana. Now, can you find for me, please, if a baby is born, in which cell will I find a Brahmana cell? You got a Brahmana cell written on it. It's not there. Okay, so you cannot think like this. It's not whether you're born in this. What makes you one of these four is what choices you're applying every single day of your life. I was, for instance, born in a family of, you could say, Vaishyas, entrepreneurs. And I was brilliant at that. And I found entrepreneurship too easy, in fact, that I thought, okay, so if I continue this, then what? Just generate more money. This is not interesting. So then I actively said, okay, so how can I turn this ability into something that's higher? And that converted into, you could say, a brahmana, or if you want to call it a teacher or whatever it is. So this means that a person is never stuck based on their varna, based on their birth. Rather, they ascend themselves by their own choices. Or sometimes you don't have to ascend yourself. You just stay exactly what you are. You just make the most of it. So this way, we cancel out this whole idea that you're doomed and therefore you can't grow. This is an absurd idea, and it contradicts the very boon of being born a human being, which demands constant growth and evolution. Why? Because you're always getting feedback of what you could improve in. Now, he then confirms this in the next verse, and he says, now, your failure to shine, your role, what will happen? Just give me a little poke. Uh-oh, what will happen? Let's see what Krishna says in verse 34. He says, Akirtin chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtihi maranad atirichyate. So, Arjuna, should you not go ahead, people will speak of your unending infamy. For the honored, dishonor is surely worse than death. Okay. You see, who is not a role model? If you're a human being, you're a role model. Yeah, whether you are aware of it or not, somebody's looking at you and saying, I find you inspiring. You don't know this, but someone is right now. Someone finds you inspiring. Did you know that? Someone is inspired by you. They never communicated it, but someone's looking over your actions, your words, and they are, looking up to you in some manner. We often don't communicate this, but this is how, because we're tribal people, we always look like babies. They learn through observation. So everyone's observing everyone else. And now, suppose Arjuna, who's being observed by an entire army, or in this case, you are observed by people who, you put loyalty in you, they have trust in you, and they say, this person is serious about their journey, I can trust them. And suppose you abandon your post, you suddenly lose it emotionally, or which can happen, right? It's not of course, depends on how you deal with it, how you follow up, and so on. But suppose you just abandon your post one fine day because all the time I've been keeping inside me how I don't like what I'm doing. This is too hard, and this is not what I really want to be doing. Then What happens is people see this and they talk about you. Now, whenever a person talks about you, are people objective when they generally talk about other people? Do they state the facts or do they add their own embellishments? They add their own embellishments. Oh, yeah. So if you ever get talked about, you will hardly ever talked about in an objective way. This is what happened. This is what's said. We like to add our own embellishments. This is one of the, human both strengths and weaknesses. It depends on how you talk about others. So in this way, what Krishna is showing is life presents you 3 levels of accountability. The first level, so now when I say this, it means that every person alive has accountability. That means you have a role to play in this world because you're given a human body that demands a certain payback, a certain, giving back to the universe. Nothing's free here, by the way. And there are 3 accountabilities. The first one is your duty. Duty, we call swadharma. Duty just means according to your talents and your abilities, uniqueness, and your strengths. In what manner are you putting that into the world? In what way are you uplifting others? In what way are you adding value to the environment? In what way are you bettering the situation? In what way are you removing ignorance and throwing light on realities? In what way is the world, because of what has the world smiled because of your presence? What has your presence done to cause the world to smile? That's the question. That's your duty. And in what manner has your duty been performed that made people walk away better than when they first met you? So these are very important questions, and they give a lot of direction in how we conduct ourselves. Now, not only duty, but of course, in the light of ethical values, that means being fair towards yourself, but also being fair towards those that you work with. So you have to be fair towards both. Now, my teacher once told me, and I never forgot this, we have this idea of being totally selfless or being selfish. Like being selfless, what is being selfless? And we often have this idea where you just give, 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 and it's all about others, others, others. But this burns you out very quickly, doesn't it? Whereas the other end is the other extreme is being selfish. That is where I don't consider other people's needs a lot. Mostly it's all about my needs. And we say this, just be selfish, just go with what's important, what you need, what you want. So there's this whole other side of language that is also common. But she said it's neither. It's called being noble. Noble is where you are you account your own needs where you need to help yourself, you need to evolve as a human being, you need your own time and space, of course, but at the same time as you contribute in this world, you also help and recognize that you are here because you were helped by so many people before you that you never met. The truck driver, well, not the truck driver, but the bus driver, the train driver, the plane, the pilot. Okay, there's so many people that have helped you to be in this place at this time. Other colleagues, your boss, your manager. You may not like them, they may not like you, but still, in some way, they have contributed to your life. So in that way, you end up contributing to other people's lives. And that's called nobility, where you take care of yourself, but also you understand that it's actually your duty in this world, for your own good, by the way, not because it's a mandate, your own duty to give back in a way that you're made to give back. So that's the first one, your duty. The second accountability that we all have is consequences. That means I not only have to be careful how my duty is performed, in what manner, and is it performed in the first place, but what are the consequences that are, coming out of my involvement in the world? As I said, is it adding a smile? Is it uplifting? Or is it, contracting the situation? Am I stifling? Am I making people or myself stuck? Or am I making things open up? Am I speaking at the right time, or am I just sort of intervening just to be part of the conversation? So all these things demand a certain a certain vision of what is the long-term consequence of my actions. We have a story in Ramayana where in Dasharatha, he was given no, it was Kaikeyi who was given the boon. Kaikeyi was given 2 boons by Dasharatha, right? And so Dasharatha was the king of Ayodhya. And Kaikeyi was one of the mothers of Bharata. He had 3 wives. And she said, you know, you will only 2 boons in the future because she did something for him. Now, when it came time to give those boons, what happened was she asked Dasharatha, not Dasharatha, is it Dasharatha? Am I right? Okay. She asked him, I want Rama to be exiled, and I want to coronate my son Bharata. I want him to be the king. And she was entirely coming out of Artha and Kama. Of course, you want security, you know, for your life. You want your son to be the king on the throne. You want to be proud mother. Of course, we all want this. But has she accounted the consequences of her actions? Has she looked at the bigger picture of what this will happen if I just, you know, that someone's already going to be the king and suddenly I just insert my own little, you know, intervention and I say, you're not going to be the king. I want for my son to be the king. Now, what about the subjects? Is that what the subjects want in Ayodhya? Is that what the family wants? Is that what Bharata? She didn't even ask Bharata, her son. So she just made this call and said, for my sake, I want my son to be on the throne. Now, what happened? She suffered a lot. You know, she lost her connection with her son. She lost her husband. She was, you know, in constant grief for doing that to Rama. So she was in a lot of pain. So though she made a decision, it did not account for the bigger picture, the after effects of her decisions. And this is unfortunate because, you know, it's very easy to feel like this pressure, like, you know, life is not giving enough to me. And it can happen later on in life, I tell you. I know couples or, you know, in marriages where everything's okay and you think it's a smooth ride and you're genuinely convinced it's a smooth ride. But because this pressure has been building up, this very silent need of something else, it starts to one day just grow so large that one of them makes a dramatic call, and that is, I want a divorce. It's like, this is a shock. Like, where did this come from? And what happens is, and because, you know, one or the two has not accounted you know, the consequences of putting their, you know, needs aside or always giving to the other, or, you know, always trying to play this role of the good person, the submissive person, the dominating person, the one who always has to take charge, and just because I should. So if one is not honest to themselves, then it can all build up slowly and turn into what we call either depression or making a very, you know, very, you know, a dramatic call. Now, even depression, by the way, is depression a 1 day thing? Does it happen overnight? Is it depression that you catch something in a week? I caught depression last week and now I'm sick of depression. No, depression is a buildup. Depression starts with one single voice. I'm not good enough. And then by the power of association of the mind, it adds extra additions. It says, because people don't talk to me, because I'm not born in the right, you know, place. And then you start to engage in confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is now I start to selectively pick evidence in the world to confirm that I am not good enough. And as the person tells themselves this narrative through years and years, and it starts very small and innocent, within 1 year, they're clinically depressed. And so clinical depression is not easy to fix because you can't fight something in 1 day, something that's being built for an entire year. So the whole point is every single thought that you have has a consequence. And if that consequence is not looked into, in what direction is this thought sending me into? In what way is this repetitive story that I'm telling myself or about the world or about anyone, in what way is this sculpting my life? In what way is it making me this person? And am I going to like the person that is making me? So thereby, the person starts to be more sensitive to the kinds of, or the qualitativeness of their thoughts, qualitativeness of their actions, and is it going to help you or is it going to hinder you in the future? Because it's all very tempting and easy to do in the moment, but can you handle it in 5 years from now? That's the real question. In 5 years, will what you're doing now, will that be bearable, or will it be, become a burden? And that's a good way to make a decision, by the way. Is what I'm going to do now, is that going to be still bearable in 5 years? Or I just chose it just because I'm coping and I just want something exciting. Well, when it's over, I'll drop it. Or you could say, the decision that I'm about to take, what kind of consequences will it have? Am I okay with those consequences? And can I times those consequences by 365 times 5? Knowing that, will I be okay with that final end? If yes, you're most likely making a good decision. For instance, suppose someone comes up to you and says, here you can, going back to the smuggler show, here's a package for you. Just transport this package and I'll give you 5,000 euros. And you go, okay, if I do this every single week for 5 years, will I like the person that I become? And then you think about that and you say, no, if I do this for the next 1 year, will I live in fear or will I be relaxed? I will live in fear. Okay. Therefore, it is not a wise decision. So I will drop that. So anytime you make a decision, you think about a trajectory in front of you. Is that trajectory something that's light and gives you, some space to think, gives you some love in life? Or is it just adding heaviness, but it sounds exciting in the moment? That's the real challenge, okay? Because it's very tempting to choose something that's exciting in the moment. And often, things that are healthy for you, they often have this signature of non-excitedness. Whereas exciting things, which may not be so healthy for you, they are exciting in the moment. So you have to make that call to yourself. Non-exciting things are healthy. Quote. Oh no, thought life was all about excitement. Okay, it is. That's up to you, but there's also the other end. Okay, now the third one. So the first one is duty. That's what's called of you while living. Second of all is the consequences of that duty. And the third one is your reputation in the society. As we said, everyone is looking up to you and you have a certain role to play and a certain role to uphold. Now, if your reputation gets compromised, then that makes your duty hard to play out. And if you cannot play out your duty, then you cannot grow because the person grows by doing what they are endowed with. And if one has a reputation that they allowed it to be tainted by false talk, by someone that was speaking wrong words, and if you let that go on for too long, at the beginning, you might sort of just brush it away like the Pandavas kept on doing. No, it's okay. He burned our house, our ex-house. He'll probably, straighten out this time. So it's not going to change. So if that is the issue, then you have to be very intelligent about in what way can you stop this or confront this so that it doesn't go too far. Because when it gets too far, then it really, even if you're a good person, it can genuinely become a real problem. So here Krishna is saying is do not forget about your reputation. In fact, your reputation is one of the most precious things that you can have on earth, especially if you are doing good things for the world. So protect that in whatever way you carry. You have to talk to the right people. sometimes do in a way that, reverses the damage. So that is really up to you. That's why we have online institutions or companies which reduce, they're called reputation control companies. And when bad customers, they will badmouth the product, or competitors will sometimes badmouth other competitors, so that you lose all the customers and your competitor gets all the money. Then you can pay the institution for like $10,000, and they will look at all the Google listings, and they will make sure that it's all pushed down. And people will pay a lot of money for this. Why? Because your whole life is really just resting on your reputation. So you can see how precious reputation is in people's eyes. And we often don't speak like this because, things are going well. But when someone starts to say something bad about you, then you really feel that sting, and you see how important it is. Okay. And we've already seen what happens when you let it slide for too long. You just look at the Pandavas and you think that Duryodhana is going to reform, but he has not reformed. He just kept on getting the license to do more, one more time, one more time, one more time. Now, hopefully, the person, who is doing this may straighten out. They may see their mistakes, but you just, sometimes can't take that chance. Now, question for you. Is it healthy to go about what people think of you? Because often we make our decisions based on what people think of us. Is that entirely healthy, or there's a unhealthy, healthy, or something in between? Suppose that you make a decision to please other people. Can that be healthy? Look at the Pandavas. They were making their decisions to please Duryodhana. It's like, it's okay, we'll take the Indraprastha, and we'll be okay with it. But underneath, what they really wanted is they wanted, a fair share of their kingdom. So they knew that you cannot just give us a small portion because we are part of this community. But they said yes. So they kept on saying yes, 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 meeting all the demands of the Kauravas, and they kept on losing out. And that's why the whole war eventually ensued. So on one hand, if you keep on making decisions based on what other people want, then that can make you inauthentic, because you're not really coming from your own place. You don't know your own thing. What am I about? And then making decisions from that. There was an interesting study done, and that was to show you why we are unhappy today as a society. And it's because we make the wrong decisions. And look at this. The study says 3 or 4 generations ago, not even your mom or dad, way before, we are, you could argue, dozen times luckier, more comfortable than 3 or 4 generations ago. Could you agree with this? In terms of technology, facilities, infrastructure, food, cleanliness, medicine, absolutely. So we are better off. Wealth, most people are wealthy today, right? More or less. It's much, much better in overall than 3 or 4 generations ago. But then it argues, if that is the case and we have more, why are we not happier? In fact, if you look at those movies from 1900s, the early ones, so cheerful. But no, we're not happier in overall. Isn't that interesting? We're not dozen times happier, though we are a dozen times more affluent than 3 or 4 generations ago. What does this show you? It's a very interesting observation, because we should be. We've got more, we've got comforts. Now, what the study says is the reason why is because you compare yourself not to 3 or 4 generations ago, you compare yourself to your current generation. So what you say is, today, just going to university is not good enough. You have to go to a prestigious university. Just having a home is not good enough. You have to live in a wealthy area. Just having some clothing is not good enough. It has to stand out. But if you really compare yourself to what people were wearing 3 or 4 generations ago, like a cloth, like nothing on it, just a cloth, underwear, and a staff, how do you feel now? Your whole perception changes, right? But now if I go, no, that's just 3 or 4 generations ago, I'm going to compare myself to today. You know what happens to your happiness? It just slumps instantly. So the study says the reason why we're not happier is because instead of looking from, how far we've gotten, we always look at our immediate environment and make a comparison and then say, you see, the environment is better off than I am, therefore I'm not in a good position. So it's like a self-defeating formula for discontent. And then we make decisions based on that. We say, no, I don't want just a random XYZ Jugu Jugu university. It has to be Stanford, right? It has to just headline it. People have to hear that. And you know what I'm talking about, right? It has to be a proper prestigious university. Otherwise, I'm not going to go to university. Okay, so this is more or less, sometimes an unhealthy way to make decisions based on the pressures of your immediate environment. Now, it can also be healthy on the other hand. Why? Because when there's a certain expectation from the society, then you're forced to look at yourself and make decisions. And when you make decisions, you get feedback. And when you get feedback, that's a free lesson for you. That's a free seminar. You came back from a seminar, you pay $5,000 to get education. Yeah, that's free. Going out into the world, according to my duty, I act out what needs to be done. In the grand scheme of things, I contribute my part. Yes, I do have pressure by society, but the society also causes me to work. And every time I work, I get feedback. And if I use that feedback for benefit, then hey, I don't mind society pressuring me into work. I can actually use that to my advantage. So once again, it's really not about what environment you're in. It's always about in what manner are you going to turn these random pressures to either hinder you or you can use them to help you. That's also a possibility. So either way, in the next verse, Krishna will now encourage with, stronger words, and he will say, okay, Arjuna, claim your victory and get up. Having said all of this, in verse 37, Hato va prapsyasi swargam, jitva va bhokshyase mahim, tasmad uttishta kaunteya, yudhaya krita nishchayaha. Okay, destroyed, you will gain heaven. Here you can replace heaven with, worldly benefits. Victorious, you will enjoy this world. Therefore, Kaunteya, get up, having resolved to fight. Okay. So, what Krishna is saying is something interesting. He's saying that Arjuna, or you, or, us, if you decide to act, is there any guarantee that you will succeed? Never. That's a fact. Okay, fine. That's a fact. So you want to build something for yourself. You want to, build up something that you already have. There's no guarantee, despite your best efforts. However, if you die, you go to Swarga because you have done what needs to be done. You were aligned with the laws. You did your duty and you did your part. If you win, you will enjoy the kingdom. Okay? So this means that, number one, there's no guarantee that I will succeed. Of course, not in everything. Some things you will succeed. But if I do my part in this world, you can replace your Swarga with a better life. I will have a better life. Situations will be better for me. I will meet the right people very quickly, the right teachers, the right parents will be there. I'll be protected. I won't have a lot of concerns. So if I die, that is there for me. Should I choose to be engaged in this life fully according to my, strengths? That means being noble. If I win, then of course you will enjoy your life, to your abilities, and then you can do whatever you want. Then he says, if you perform your duty-bound actions, or just actions, in the light of your strengths, regardless of the result, you will still benefit. Why? Because you will massively learn about yourself. See, a businessman who fails at building a venture, how do they walk out? Not depressed. They walk out with a huge lesson. This didn't work. This didn't work. Now let's choose a different product. If a student fails at exam with the right attitude, how do they walk out? Not that they do nowadays, but hopefully with the right attitude, you walk out and say, my method of study did not work. I thought I could cram it all in 24 hours. It didn't work. So let's change my approach next time. So this means that everything that when there's a failure ends up actually building your character. Did you ever have a time where you didn't want to do something, but something in you got you to do it anyway? And when you showed up, things became immediately easier. And by the time you ended that experience, you came out stronger. And you realized, had you chosen to not come or not participate, you would have missed out on the character building that you have gotten now, having said yes, having pushed yourself, having gotten up. Did you have that experience? I don't want to do it. Oh, I don't want to wake up early. I don't want to go. And then something in you, some weird voice, some strange voice says, do it. And you push, and you may not even be happy getting there. You may even be imagining how it's all going to turn out unwell, and you finally get there. And, it starts out normally, you're sort of catching on, but very quickly you're into it. By the end of it, you're like, wow, I've learned so much. So he says, by your duty-bound actions, if you fail while doing your duty with the best of your abilities, with the best enthusiasm that you have, still you will develop character. Is that exciting? To fail now? Anyone wants to fail now? Having heard this? Yeah, hopefully we can all fail now, right? Because failure will lead to your feedback. Feedback will lead to your betterment. Betterment will lead to doing things better next time. So this means I have no choice to improve the character than through failure. That's the only way. Was it Thomas Edison, right? They used this common example. He had to fail 9,000 times, 999,000 times, 9,999 times to discover that one way to build a light bulb. So he was not a failure. It was 9,000 feedbacks, what doesn't work, till he found that method that breaks you through, and you say, whew, that took time. That took a while. Thank you, Lord. Finally. So, therefore, get up. And so now when it says here, get up, see, we have to convert this into our language. Arjuna's get up is from the battlefield. What is your battlefield? It's not a bunch of people with bows and arrows or guns. Your battlefield is the workplace, family matters, domestic affairs, your own inner mind. So these are all things from where I have to get out, because if I stay there too long, I get stuck. You build a little hole, it's very comfortable, and you don't move. Now, what happens sometimes is while participating in this journey, doing your role, you might end up hurting people, and others might end up hurting you. This is inevitable. So now the question is, how do you tell whether when somebody hurts you, whether you're responding from what needs to be done or whether you're responding from a sense of revenge? Is that a fair question? How do you know if you're responding from a sense of, I want to get back at them, or you're responding objectively. So I want to give you 13 common mental patterns that we fall for, which makes us choose the wrong idea, makes us choose, and then we get convinced, no, that's the right thing, but it was actually based on your subjectivities, your prejudices. The first one is what we call in psychology all or nothing thinking. I think this is self-explanatory, where either I'm a failure or I'm a loser. If this happens, I will feel successful. If this doesn't happen, I will never attain moksha, right? Either I attain moksha or I don't attain moksha. It's all good or it's all bad. You're a completely bad person. You're a completely good person. So this is where the brain likes to simplify things, and it likes to put it into two categories. It's very easy to do this. But the problem with this is you short circuit something very precious to you, and that is your ability to look through and through things. That is the most precious ability that you have. That's why you're a manushya. You're a thinking being. So all or nothing thinking, you can say, is it really all bad? Let's get real. Is it really all bad? Is the world, is this person really all bad? And you have to confess, no, they're not all bad. Are you really all XYZ? And you have to say, no, I'm a lot more than just this. So you have to look at yourself and say, I'm actually made up of so many more qualities than this one thing that happens to be bothering me. So this is useful. Otherwise, that one thing that bothers you, as we said, it turns into depression because it keeps on, right, ruminating upon. The second is called discounting positives. Self-explanatory, where you say that the positives don't matter. So when somebody compliments you, you know, you really speak well, you really have great ideas. Yeah, whatever, you know, whatever. So you don't even give them any attention or any, you know, so it's like almost like you're this a person who's just totally impervious to compliments, right? And like, no, I'm the wise person where both criticism and praise don't touch me. Now they can turn into another complex and then you say, no, no, I don't care what people say. But actually, if you just take a moment to acknowledge that what the person has said, that was feedback right there. They just told you something that if you do more of it, is going to help others and is going to help you. It's going to make your life better. So let's not discount positives. The third one is unfair comparison. That's where you look at someone that's always in a better position. They always have better, more things than you. They know more than you. They, you know, have read more books than you. They read more courses than you. They're, you know, they got more teachers than you. They've got, you know, more health than you. And you're like, how far is this going to go? So you say, stop. Who am I going to compare myself to? Myself. There's no one else to compare yourself to. Look at yourself today, and I compare myself to how was I yesterday. If I'm just 1% better in whatever way, you have done well. So let's not compare to something that's always better, because I guarantee you there will always be something better than you know, what you're having right now. The fourth one is mind reading. Mind reading is where you assume that you can read your partner's mind. You know, I know what you're thinking. I'm being too long with you, or you can read other people's mind. The truth is, you can't, because you might read as part of their mind, and they're now forced to, out of, you know, just to be nice, say, yeah, that's true. But the truth is, there's no need to, you know, pretend like I can read people's minds. And even if you do, so what? How is that going to help you? Rather just ask people, you know, what I want to know some feedback. Can you give me some feedback? Why did this happen? So the fifth one is should statements. Should statements is something that you learned when you were small. These are rules that you made, which you haven't taken time to investigate, such as I should never make mistakes. That's a very harsh rule that you put on yourself. Why? Mistakes are healthy. We just said that's how you learn. I should always arrive on time. Okay, so if you add so many shoulds and shouldn'ts, I should not speak unwell of people. But what if you're genuinely having a a moment and you say, I should not speak on well people? Instead of saying I should not, rather say, okay, let me find a positive quality about them instead of saying I should not. So the more these shoulds and shouldn'ts you place upon yourself, I should not, I should do this, I should take out the whatever, I should not do this, the more you add pressure upon yourself, and that pressure makes your life extremely unenjoyable. You see, we're not perfect. No one's perfect, because even to be perfect, what is perfection, by the way? Perfection is an idea that a person puts in a form of standard. And if I violate those standards, I'm not perfect. But those standards themselves, life doesn't care about, putting harsh standards. Life just flows. So if I have this standard, I actually suppress forward movement. And I say, this is how it should be. But is it like that? You say, no, it's not like that. It's actually like this. So then you say, instead of saying what I should and shouldn't, let me work with what I'm given and make a right decision when it comes. Next one is fortune telling. Fortune telling is where you can predict the future. Can anyone do that here, please? Can you predict your moksha? Before you got moksha, I know some people here are already wise, but before that happened, could you predict that? No, you could not. In fact, it happened in the most unusual way, in the most unexpected way. Can you predict that you will not get moksha? Because a lot of people say, I will not get moksha in this lifetime. This is my karma. Hear that all the time. Can you predict that? Can you predict your thought 5 minutes from now? So if I can't predict my thought 5 minutes from now, who am I to predict that I will, figure this out or not? See, that's a rule. It's an unfair rule that a person puts in themselves. So let's drop fortune telling. Next one is catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is where you create the worst case scenario, or you expect the worst case. For instance, there was this funny real life situation. One of the sons, he got into a relationship, and he broke off with the girlfriend. And so he went inside the bathroom and he just stayed there for like 1 hour. And the father was so worried, he thought he hung himself, right? So he was knocking constantly. Hey, it's just, hey, the plane has been late. Oh, it probably crashed. So this is catastrophizing, where you create the worst possible situation, but is that really fair upon you? No. So you have to catch yourself and say, this is unhealthy for me. Another one you can say is, another one is called self-blame. Self-blame is where you try to take responsibility for things that are truly out of your control or not completely in your control. For instance, this venture, this business has broken down. It's my fault. Is it really your fault? Is it completely your fault? Or is it also the contribution of employees, of people you knew, of time, of economy, of demand, of supply? How many more things? It's just not possible to put all blame on yourself. So if there's anyone that's blaming yourself for being in a situation that you are, just pause for a moment and recognize you are not completely at fault. There is always other variables that were totally out of your control. And no matter what or how it turned out, it would have still been exactly the same. So it's just simply drop this idea that you are at fault. Okay. And of course, blaming others, that is where you take, you refuse to take responsibility and then you attribute that onto somebody else, because it's much easier to do that than to own up and say, actually, I was very much also an involved party in this and I could have done something. So these are some of the negative patterns that we can watch out for. And next week, we will look at what, based on what criteria do we make our decisions? And we will then move into using that criteria to make the right decisions in the light of karma yoga. And karma yoga is a way of living in a healthy manner. So this will happen next week.
There's a question in the chat about AI guru.
Okay. Who's AI guru? AI guru is so I would say that this is, but what about AI guru? I don't understand. What about it?
The question is, hi Andre G, what about AI guru? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, sorry guys, can you hear me?
Sure. So yeah.
Yeah, Andre, go on, sorry. You mentioned earlier, this is based on what you said earlier about you know, one of the three boons is that a guru, and I said, does that include the AI guru? Because I use AI quite a lot to sometimes get spiritual knowledge or understanding of it. So yeah.
Sure. Well, actually, there's a disclaimer at the end of the AI guru, which says the AI can educate you. It can, do as far as that, but can it touch your heart? Most, I don't know, but I know one thing for sure. A teacher touches your heart much deeper than an AI can. So now, based on that, you use AI, but also remember a teacher, a live human being also has a role in a whole tradition. So I don't dismiss AI. I use AI, we can use AI to be a complement, but to replace this, I do not see happening anytime soon. In fact, if somebody wants to do this, they will miss great amount of nuances that a human being can give you. And you also know that if you do an AI response versus when a human being talks, there's a difference. Even though the human being cannot put a well-structured sentence like AI can, there's something about when you're hearing experience talk, there's something that touches you that AI can never do that. So both of them are very good if you use them in conjunction.
Thanks, that's very helpful, Andre. So the reason why I asked that was because I came across he's a tantric teacher based in the US, and he's been involved in a scandal, and he's very knowledgeable, but he unfortunately misused a lot of his knowledge for his own desires. Let's just say that. So I mean, the reason why I came to you because I trust your knowledge, and I've been listening to you for a while on YouTube anyway. I'm the one who's always saying, do you have an EU-friendly class, which I'm glad you have now. So that was kind of the reason. I think AI will be impartial. It won't have any sexual desires or anything like that. But I totally understand what you're saying as well. I think when you've got a good teacher, that can beat AI anytime. So yeah, that was the basis of the question.
Yeah, exactly. And we're tribal people, so we look at each other in terms of human beings. See, I don't know about you, but I get inspired through human beings. I don't get inspired through AI. AI educates me, it reassures me, but whose voice do I hear in the back of my mind? It's always going to be my teacher. And why is that? Because I have a relationship with her, and I've been listening to her for 10 years, and so that's a lot of influence. So yeah, tradition is always going to be tradition. You cannot negate this with all the technology. Okay, so keeping this in mind, next week we'll speak of karma yoga. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.